A van carrying gas cylinders explodes in Italy. Authorities report no casualties, but one individual was injured in the subsequent blast. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am Ricky Mathay. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. with Vietnam Prime Minister Pham Minchin reinforce agricultural ties. Lawmakers push amendments of Mutual Defense Treaty. China and Germany exchange heated words over the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Saudi Arabia and Syria resume diplomatic missions in both countries. And Philippine Arena to hold Summer Blast 2023 this Saturday. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minchin discussed partnerships in the field of agriculture during the ASEAN Summit in Labuan Bajo, Indonesia. Madeline Villar Muratillo has a report.
According to Malacanang, a bilateral meeting on the sideline of the 42nd ASEAN Summit in Labuan Bajo, Indonesia, occurred in which President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minchin strengthened ties between the two countries. President Marcos highlighted the trade relations between the Philippines and Vietnam, which he hopes to develop beyond the rice trade. Prime Minister Pham notes that they would look into agricultural products that they can afford to provide to the Philippines for long-term benefits. The Vietnamese Prime Minister added that both countries must ensure stability in the quality and price of their products to lessen possible external shocks in the future. President Marcos suggests that the two nations can help each other, along with other Southeast Asian countries, to strengthen tourism recovery efforts. Madeline Villar Muratillo reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
According to National Statistician Dennis Mapa, in the first 3 months of 2023, the Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, recorded that the Philippine economy growth sunk by 0.7%, settling at 6.4%. During the last quarter of 2022, it was recorded at 7.1%. National Economic and Development Authority Secretary Arsenio Balisacan reports that the slowdown was an effect of the high inflation rate in the country. Balisacan adds that the effect of high prices in the previous year, which resulted in a crackdown in monetary policy and interest rate increase, are beginning to manifest. Octa Research said that the COVID-19 positivity rate in NCR climbs up to 24.2% as of May 9. According to Octa Research fellow Dr. Guido David, this is from the 19.7% last May 2. David said to expect an increase of COVID-19 cases in the next 1 to 2 weeks. Hospital bed occupancy remains low at 27%. David added that the positivity rate in the entire country is at 22.4%. He also presumes that new cases of COVID-19 will hit 1,900 to 2,000 in the following days. Octa Research expressed that the Department of Health should continue issuing advisory and safety guidelines for the public. Kuwait recently issued a temporary ban for all overseas Filipino workers. Vin Pasqua has a report.
Labor ties between the Philippines and Kuwait have grown languid over the death of 35-year-old Julibi Ranara, whose remains were burned in the desert. Dubai Press published that OFWs are temporarily not welcome in Kuwait after their government reportedly suspended the granting of entry and work visas to Filipinos. The temporary ban comes from Interior Minister Sheikh Talal Al-Khalid Al-Sabah. Al-Sabah says the Philippines has not complied with parts of the labor pact between the two countries. According to a previous statement by the Department of Migrant Workers Undersecretary Hans Leo Kakdak, there are reportedly 268,000 Filipinos in Kuwait, with 88% of which being household service workers. The Kuwait Progressive Movement viewed the decision as discriminatory, adding that foreign workers have been receiving unfair treatment from local employers. DMW Secretary Susan Ople expressed her distress over implementing a deployment ban. The secretary called the measure premature, and the matter could be resolved through a diplomatic review of the bilateral labor agreement. Vin Pascua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In the Senate, lawmakers push amendments to the Mutual Defense Treaty. J.D. Mahinay has a report.
The amendment of the Mutual Defense Treaty, or MDT, is now promoted in the Senate. Senator Francis Tolentino, in his proposed Senate Resolution number 584, says that the MDT of the Philippines with the United States is currently 71 years old. Tolentino wants the provision to include the clarification that the agreement and cooperation will cover the West Philippine Sea and other territories in which the Philippines has sovereign rights. The amendment states that the U.S. should pay appropriate compensation to the local government units where the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA, will also be implemented. This is due to placing their equipment and conducting activities in the agreed location in the country. He also adds that it should be clear in the treaty that the Philippines and the United States will aid each other in the event of a cyber attack on critical infrastructure and vital installations such as nuclear plants, military bases, and government buildings. J.D. Mahina reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Land Transportation Office, or LTO, has free theoretical driving courses for ensuring vehicles to be roadworthy and safe on roads. LTO aims to assist those who cannot afford to pay for student permit application and get essential driving education. Land Transportation Office will be holding extensive and free theoretical driving course, or TDC, for pre-registered student driver applicants from this day until tomorrow. After this, it will be a regular or monthly holding of free TDC at all LTO offices as part of the agency's efforts to have driving education scholars. The initiative is part of the agency's 111th anniversary celebration. The agency reasserts that it is better to transact student permit applications at LTO offices and not with fixers. The Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, says 474 Filipinos have been repatriated from conflict-torn Sudan. DFA also confirmed more Filipinos are scheduled to return to the Philippines by May 12. Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary Paul Cortez said at least 730 Filipinos have fled Khartoum. Cortez added between 50 to 60 Filipinos remain in Sudan. The group expressed their intent to leave as they fear for their safety as the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces continue to clash in Khartoum. Foreign direct investment, or FDI, in the country hits $1 billion this February. Mian Corvera for the report.
According to Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the foreign direct investments in the Philippines hit $1 billion in February. FDI is the investment made by foreign companies or individuals in the Philippines. BSP data shows that the recorded FDI net inflows in February is amounting to $1.047 billion, a 13% increase from $926 million in the same month a year ago. This was also higher than $448 million net inflows in January. This is the highest recorded in 15 months since almost $1.3 billion FDI entered in the country in November 2022. FDIs can be in the form of equity capital, reinvestment of earnings, and borrowings. Most of the equity capital placement in the month came from Japan, United States, and Cayman Islands. According to the central bank, most investments are placed in manufacturing, real estate, electricity, gas, steam, and air conditioning supply, and financial insurance industries. Mayan Corvera for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, France remains confident with China's role for peace in Ukraine. New York Representative George Santos pleads not guilty to all charges. And Republicans name Biden family members allegedly involved in illegal money deals. Stay tuned for more stories from around the globe when we return.
Hi guys! Ako po si Nick Galano at abangan niyo po ako bilang guest performer sa Letters and Music ngayong Sabado 1 to 2 p.m. Siyempre, dito lamang sa Net25. See you!
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. United States President Joe Biden warns that the whole world is in trouble if the U.S. defaults on its debt. The threat of a national debt default is looming, with debt ceiling negotiations stalling. In a speech focused on raising the debt ceiling in Valhalla, New York, Biden says the Republicans are holding the economy hostage. He says Republicans are demanding politically motivated budget cuts in return for a debt limit vote.
They're doing to the best of my knowledge, what no other political party has done in the nation's history. They're literally, not figuratively, holding the economy hostage by threatening to default on our nation's debt that we've already incurred. We've already incurred over the last couple hundred years, unless we give in to their threats and demands as to what they think we should be doing with regard to the budget.
Russia's top diplomat Sergei Lavrov accuses the United States of destabilizing Syria. Lavrov also joins Iran and Turkey to discuss Syrian peace plans. From Moscow, Russia, RT correspondent Igor Zanov reports.
The meeting took place in the building right behind me, and what grabbed the spotlight was the security situation in the region. So naturally, the topic of Syria dominated the agenda, and mostly the relations between Turkey and Damascus. Lately, they have been taking baby steps, the diplomats of these countries, to revive the relations that have been well tarnished by the years of conflict in Syria and war. And so here, this meeting, it was aiming to lament that and to build up on the progress previously made. So naturally, the security situation in Syria, that's what was discussed. And as Sergei Lavrov, Russia's top diplomat, accused Washington of trying to destabilize the situation in Syria, in the country, by what you've just heard, by creating this, by reviving this free Syrian army and feeding it with terrorists and all sorts of fringe groups and militants. Here, the diplomats, they tried to do something on the contrary, to help Syria become parts of the big regional family. And of course, Turkey shares a lengthy border with the country, and a big chunk of Syria is under the control, de facto, under the control of the Kurds, whose military wing is considered terrorist by Ankara. So there's plenty of hotspots to sort out. But, well, it seems that the diplomats, that they have made progress and that they vowed to continue to do the work and to bring Ankara and Damascus closer to each other. After all, the countries, they share so many of the same problems, and the latest being, of course, the tragedy that happened right after, that was caused by a massive earthquake. Tens of thousands of people were killed in Turkey, and the figures are smaller but still absolutely horrific in Syria. And as the international community rushed to help Turkey, well, they kind of ignored Syria, although again thousands of people died there. And this is something that was mentioned at the meeting today, as well as the leaders, they pointed out that, well, even this tragedy, even this massive loss of life, it did not prompt the United States not even to lift the sanctions, but to even ease them just a little bit. And those sanctions, let me just remind you, well, they do affect the shipments of medicine and humanitarian cargo and humanitarian goods as well. And now internal Turkish relations, they also were on the table. The Russian foreign minister, he wished luck to his Turkish counterpart. So plenty of things on the table, plenty to discuss, and this was just a small step towards a bigger goal that all foreign ministers sitting behind the same table seem to be pursuing.
France remains confident that China has an important role to play for global peace and stability. Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna echoes French President Emmanuel Macron's statement, asserting China must convince Russia to fully respect the UN Charter. Colonna also met with her Chinese counterpart Qin Gang. China reportedly asserts itself as a neutral party in Russia's conflict with Ukraine. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky also had a telephone call last month. The two leaders agreed that talks and negotiation were the only way out of war. China also vows to send a delegation to Ukraine to look for a political statement.
La scène mondiale et l'importance aussi du rôle qu'elle peut jouer pour la paix et la stabilité mondiale. La Chine a émis des idées, nous en avons qui peuvent pour partie converger. En tout cas, elles convergeront si nous sommes attachés les uns et les autres à assurer le respect effectif des grands principes de la Charte des Nations Unies. Je pense évidemment, en disant cela, à la guerre d'agression russe contre l'Ukraine. Il faut parvenir à convaincre la Russie de revenir à un plein respect de la Charte.
Colonna also discussed with Qin the issue of North Korea. She believes Pyongyang's recent missile launches are escalating.
Je pense aussi bien sûr au dossier de la Corée du Nord, avec, nous en parlerons dans nos entretiens, une attitude également préoccupante de la part de la Corée du Nord qui est dans une escalade dont je souhaiterais que nous parlions en toute liberté pour voir comment répondre dans l'unité et continuer d'œuvrer pour la stabilité dans la péninsule et dans la région.
Colonna says France wants to develop a fruitful cooperation agenda with China on global issues. She believes partnering with China is essential to facing international challenges. At their second meeting in a month, China and Germany exchanged heated words over the Russia and Ukraine conflict. Foreign Minister Qin Gang vows that China will take action to protect the interests of Chinese companies based in Germany. Qin responded to the European Union's plans to sanction China over its trade relationship with Russia. Qin says China is not supplying weapons to crisis countries. He asserts Beijing and Moscow enjoy normal trade exchanges, which must not be affected.
不应该受到影响。我们坚决反对有的国家集团以自己的所谓的法律对别国，包括对中国实施 长臂管辖和单边的制裁。如果是这样的话，中方也将做出必要的反应，坚决维护中国企业的正当的权益和合法的利益。
Germany says EU states want to ensure that existing sanctions against Russia are not subverted through third countries. Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock also believes China's neutrality in the conflict means taking Russia's side.
Im Lichte von Recht und Unrecht, im Lichte eines Aggressors und eines Opfers. Neutralität bedeutet, sich auf die Seite.
Baerbock also reminds China, being a UN Security Council member, it bears responsibility for global peace. She insists China had always pushed for peaceful dialogue to end the conflict in Ukraine. Presidential candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. quashed rumors saying he will join former President Donald Trump's election ticket. On Twitter, Kennedy made it clear that he is not interested in teaming up with Trump. Kennedy's remark comes a day after the release of a Rasmussen Reports survey. The poll shows Kennedy having favorable ratings among Democrats, Republicans, and independent voters. Former United States President Donald Trump said he will pardon supporters convicted for the January 6th Capitol riot. Trump acknowledged that some of his supporters went out of control. The former president stated that he was not justifying the riots. He believed justice must be made for those who were wrongly persecuted. Indonesian President Joko Widodo acknowledged fellow Southeast Asian leaders, revealing that no progress has been made to end the civil strife gripping in Myanmar.
Saya harus berterus terang bahwa implementasi 5-point konsensus belum ada kemajuan yang signifikan, sehingga diperlukan kesatuan ASEAN untuk merumuskan langkah-langkah ke depan.
The 2023 ASEAN chairperson referred to the peace plan forged by the 10-nation bloc with Myanmar's top general in 2021. In the previous summit, leaders called for an immediate end to the violence and dialogue among contending parties to be brokered through an ASEAN special envoy. Myanmar's top brass refused to take steps towards the implementation of their 5-point consensus. Their stagnation has forced the ASEAN leader to exclude the country and its appointees from the bloc summit meetings.
Yang ingin saya pastikan adalah bahwa isu Myanmar tidak boleh menghambat percepatan pembangunan komunitas ASEAN, karena pembangunan komunitas ini adalah yang ditunggu oleh masyarakat ASEAN.
Peace talks between Sudan's warring armed forces and Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, have made progress. An agreement on a ceasefire is expected soon. Clashes between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary RSF first erupted in mid-April, killing hundreds and injuring thousands. The leaders of Sudan's army and the paramilitary group agreed to send representatives to the Saudi city of Jeddah for pre-negotiation talks mediated by the United States and Saudi Arabia. The Sudanese army and RSF were recently allies who worked together to oust Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. Tensions rose during negotiations to integrate the RSF into the country's military as part of plans to restore civilian rule. Saudi Arabia and Syria have resumed diplomatic missions in both countries. This has been a significant step forward after Riyadh cut ties with the Syrian government for more than a decade. The announcement came 2 days after Syria was readmitted into the Arab League. Damascus also announced the decision to resume working on its diplomatic mission in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Officials and analysts said that Syria's readmission into the Arab League, while symbolic, comes with the hope that it could pave the way for the rehabilitation of President Bashar al-Assad's image. Further progress could potentially oversee the removal of sanctions against the regime. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that Canada will not be intimidated by China's retaliatory expulsion of a Canadian consul after Ottawa ousted a Chinese diplomat. The Canadian leader said his administration took the decision to expel the Chinese official to send a clear message that they would not accept foreign interference. Tensions flared on Monday when Canada announced the expulsion of Chinese diplomat Zhao Wei from its consulate in Toronto. China responded by expelling the Canadian consul Jennifer Lalonde from Shanghai. Trudeau acknowledged that declaring a foreign diplomat persona non grata is a significant and serious step. He added Ottawa will continue to do everything necessary to keep Canadians protected from fear of foreign interference. Republican Congressman George Santos pleads not guilty in a federal court in New York to multiple charges of fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and making false statements.
All right, everyone get it. Are you going to speak for me? Do you want to address them too? Don't be a white. Well, you're in front of me.
Congressman, did you...
I'm going to fight my battle. I'm going to deliver. I'm going to fight the witch hunt. I'm going to take care of clearing my name, and I look forward to doing that. All right.
Santos denied all 13 counts and was released on a $5,000 bond. United States Magistrate Judge Arlene Lindsay forced Santos to surrender his passport. Santos was also ordered to give notice for any travel outside Long Island, New York City, and Washington, D.C. He departed the courthouse several hours after he surrendered to authorities, having slipped in through a back door and avoiding the crowd of reporters and cameras at the main entrance. Santos faces a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison if convicted of all charges. He will not have to relinquish his seat. However, members sentenced to at least 2 years cannot vote or be on House committees. Santos's next court appearance is scheduled for the 30th of June.
Are you planning on running for re-election?
Yes, I am.
And why should anybody believe you now?
Well, like I said, I will prove myself innocent, and then we'll move from there. And re-election is a very far time away.
Republicans released the names of 10 family members of United States President Joe Biden allegedly involved in shady foreign deals. House Oversight Committee Chairperson James Comer named Hunter, Haley, Melissa, James, and Sarah Biden. Comer also listed Kathleen Buell Biden and some grandchildren, nieces, and nephews of the U.S. president. The Oversight Committee confirmed an additional Biden bank account has been identified. Owners of said account have yet to be determined. Commerce said bank records of over $10 million showed the alleged illegal money deals. He claimed it is inconceivable that Biden was not aware of the transactions. Hunter Biden's lawyer dubbed the revelations as misstatements of proper business deals by private citizens. The White House also dismissed the whole investigation as another political stunt. Up next, Nazi jewels sell for more than $155 million. Protesters erupt outside banks in Lebanon. And footbridge in Finland collapses, injuring 27 children. Please don't go away. We've got more stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Q na A. Kung ang tawag sa rubber shoes ni Superman ay kryptonite. Nike. Okay. Kryptonite ha. Tandaan mo, Rafa Flor. Anong tawag sa rubber shoes ni Batman? Sirit? Sige, paano po? 1, 2, 3. Sabay-sabay tayo. 1, 2, 3.
Oh no! It's Biro only! Sa Net 25!
Meron din tayo bagong makakasama. Ating child star.
Please welcome Charlie Santos!
Meron din tayong bisita. Merong makiki-sit-in Miss Jana Madrid!
Hoy! Gising ka nga dyan!
Bakit?
Kakagumi yung kapitbahay. Tayo yung inaaway nila. Ang lakas-lakas mo daw humilit.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director announces her intent to leave the agency by the end of June. Rosal Feria tells us more.
Dr. Rochelle Walensky of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announces her departure as director of the health agency. In a statement, Walensky says the end of the COVID-19 public health emergency marks a tremendous transition for the country, for public health, and in her tenure as CDC Director. CDC says Walensky helped restore morale and the sense of normalcy to an agency that had been enduring significant public adversity related to the COVID-19 pandemic. During Walensky's tenure, the agency addressed a multinational Mpox outbreak, contained the spread of Ebola in Uganda, and responded to infectious disease threats in countries around the globe. In Washington, D.C., Rosel Feria for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Divers are searching a river in northwestern Nigeria for the bodies of 25 children who went missing after an overloaded boat capsized. Rescue workers recovered the bodies of 15 others, 13 girls and 2 boys. The children were on their way to collect firewood from the other side of the Sagari River when the boat sank. Authorities speculate that the boat hit a tree stump which punctured the hull. River accidents are frequent in Nigeria, often caused by overloading, poor maintenance, and disregard of safety regulations. Heavy flooding in the rainy season is another known cause. People often travel by boat because roads in Nigeria are in poor condition. In the United States, the Education Department calls on colleges, universities, and school districts to help accelerate learning and recovery in their K-12 schools. Jeff Sanidad tells us more.
The Department of Education today released a Dear Colleague letter appealing to colleges and universities in the country that receive federal work-study or FWS dollars. FWS provides part-time jobs for undergraduate and graduate students with financial needs. The program encourages community service work and work related to the student's course of study. Through the letter, the department is asking that colleges and universities use at least 15% of their FWS funds and other resources to employ, among others, tutors, mentors, and student success coaches for the benefit of those in kindergarten to 12th grade. The U.S. is facing significant impacts of the pandemic on the K-12 students' learning and mental health. These impacts also include widened long-standing inequities and opportunity gaps for low-income students, students of color, English learners, and students with disabilities. At present, 26 colleges and universities have said yes to be early adopters of the effort. Through the initiative, the Department of Education hopes that more colleges and universities answer the call. It is also hoping that through the program, more college students of diverse backgrounds and income levels will be inspired to consider careers as educators. In Washington, D.C., Jeff Sanidad for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Jewish groups are criticizing the sale of jewelry belonging to an Austrian billionaire whose German husband made this fortune under the Nazi regime. The jewels belong to Heidi Horton, who died last year at the age of 81. Reports say her assets amount to $3 billion. The jewels have been sold at auction for more than $155 million, roughly 8.5 billion pesos. Christie's International handled the sale of nearly 100 pieces. Prices for some of the items fell short of expectations. Critics of the sale say it should have been delayed until it has been determined what portion of the wealth came from Nazi victims. The proceeds will go to charity. Christie says it is making a separate donation for Holocaust research and education. The rest of the collection will be sold through online and live auctions by the end of the year. In Switzerland, authorities have given the 85 people living in the village of Brines until Friday evening to leave their homes. Geologists say the community is in the path of a potential rock slide. The village is located at the valley of the base of a mountain. Geologists stated that up to 2 million cubic meters of rocks could come down in the coming weeks. The problem could be attributed to global warming. As temperatures have risen, glaciers are melting and the permafrost slowly disappears. Essentially, mountains have been thawing out, which causes them to become unstable. For years, residents have been used to the sight of large boulders tumbling down the mountainside. Villagers will be allowed to return home from time to time, depending on the risk level. However, they would not be allowed to stay overnight. Outsiders are barred from entering the village. The army has been called in to help quell protests in Pakistan following the arrest of former Prime Minister Imran Khan. The violence has claimed 8 lives. Authorities arrested Khan on corruption charges. His arrest sparked protests in which demonstrators attacked several government buildings in the country. The military says further violence will be met with severe retaliation. More than 1,400 protesters have been arrested. Earlier this evening, the Pakistan Supreme Court ruled Khan's arrest was illegal. Authorities are instructed to immediately release him. Angry bank depositors gather before Lebanon's largest banks to demand for their money back. The protest comes after local lenders blocked bank withdrawals. The rally intensified when protesters threw fireworks at the police. They also shattered bank windows and blocked the streets. Some hurled burning tires and attempted to storm inside banks. The group also staged a sit-in before government buildings. Authorities reported several injuries. Reports say Lebanese people have been locked out of their deposits for nearly 4 years. In Finland, a footbridge collapses, injuring 27 youth. Helsinki hospital authorities says the children were rushed to the hospital after sustaining minor injuries. Authorities report the children are 8th grade students returning from a field trip. Rescuers say the bridge fell several meters onto a road. According to police, a temporary bridge was constructed from plywood while maintenance was ongoing in the area. In Italy, a van carrying 20 gas cylinders explodes. Local police say the fire spreads fast to 5 adjacent cars. Firefighters struggled to extinguish the flames as the cylinders contained 32 liters of highly flammable oxygen. Authorities report no casualties. However, 1 individual was injured in the subsequent blast. Britain launched its plans to ease pressure on the National Health Service. From London, England, our correspondent Love Season tells us more.
Britain's pharmacists will soon be able to prescribe drugs that were previously only authorized by doctors under government plans unveiled Tuesday to ease pressure on the state-run National Health Service. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, whose Conservative Party was battered in local polls last week over the worsening cost of living crisis, wants to ease pressure on doctors' surgeries and slash NHS waiting lists before a general election expected next year. The NHS, however, remains plagued by strikes as health workers protest over wages that have failed to keep pace with rampant inflation, despite their vital role during the COVID pandemic and beyond. Under the new plans, treatments for 7 common conditions, including earache and sore throats, will be available without seeing a doctor. The government hopes that the measure will be introduced this winter. NHS Chief Executive Amanda Pritchard wrote in the Daily Mail that the overall package to deal with doctor waiting times will help them to free up millions of appointments for those who need them most. The state-funded healthcare system recently suffered its biggest day of strike action since it was founded in 1948, with staff complaining of dwindling pay, overwork caused by a lockdown backlog, and a difficulty in replacing departing colleagues. This is Love and Season London Bureau for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Alberta government says it will provide financial assistance to people who have been displaced because of the wildfires. Net25 correspondent Thomas I. Likeness reports Alberta remains under a state of emergency as firefighters continue to wage war against the active blazes.
Thousands of people have had to flee their homes as the flames got too close for comfort. The fires continue to threaten more than 20 communities in northern and central Alberta, and at one point, some 30,000 Albertans were forced to seek shelter elsewhere. For many, it's a financial burden. That's prompted Premier Danielle Smith to announce financial help for those who had to evacuate.
This is an incredibly stressful time, and we know Albertans need extra support while they are out of their homes and communities. And that's why we're announcing that additional help is on the way for wildfire evacuees.
Smith has also asked the federal government for help, and that could include assistance from the military. Alberta is Canada's major oil-producing province, and the fires have forced some energy companies to cut production as the fires encroach upon their operations. That has cut oil production in Alberta by about 2%. On Monday, firefighters got a bit of a break as badly needed rain fell and temperatures remained in the mid-teens Celsius. But unless a heavy rain persists for several days, the risk of more fires being sparked remains. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Climate change talks between Australia and Papua New Guinea resumed this year, advancing action plans against the global threat. Eco Hortaleza Quinola reports.
After the long disturbance of COVID-19 pandemic, the annual dialogue on climate change between Papua New Guinea and Australia commences in person at Hilton, Port Moresby. The dialogue aims to advance priority issues and showcase achievement under the bilateral partnership of the two countries. Special Climate Change Envoy Mr. Ruel Yamuna and Climate Change and Development Authority Acting Managing Director William Lacain led the Papua New Guinea representatives. Australian Ambassador for Climate Change, Ms. Christine Tille, heads the Australian delegate. Among the key priorities include are advancing Papua New Guinea-Australia climate change action plans for the next 5 years, climate finance, carbon market participation, international climate partnership, and among others. The dialogue ends with 2 agreement signings, the statement outcome, and the joint action plan.
Papua New Guinea is part of the Pacific, and as we all know, the Pacific is one of the regions most affected by the impacts of climate change. PNG has a strong reliance on rain-fed subsistence agriculture in rural areas, and changes in weather patterns will absolutely impact food systems here. Coastal and atoll communities will also be impacted by sea level rise and more frequent storms. That's why in July 2022, Australia joined Pacific leaders in declaring that the Pacific is facing a climate emergency, underscoring the urgency to scale up ambition, global ambition, and implementation of actions to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And in PNG this year, we're working closely with the government here to design a long-term program to strengthen PNG's systems to help it access a greater share of international climate finance from both governments and the private sector.
This partnership demonstrates the commitment for a long-term program to battle climate change threats and impact. Eko Hortaleza Quinola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Ecuador has converted $1.6 billion of commercial debt into a loan that will direct vast resources to Galapagos Islands conservation. This is the largest ever transaction of its kind. The deal converting its debt into a $656 million loan for the same amount cut the South American country's debt obligations by about $1.1 billion. The loan is financed by a Credit Suisse structured Galapagos marine bond. It would also generate more than $450 million for marine conservation in the Galapagos Marine Reserve and UN Heritage Site over the next 20 years. Coming right up, Tucker Carlson is reviving his show on Twitter. Google announces barred opening to 180 countries. And Philippine Arena to hold Summer Blast 2023. Catch the latest in business, sports, and entertainment when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Despite the setback from surge in consumer and fuel prices, the businesses managed to thrive largely due to strong leadership of entrepreneurs and their resilient spirit. In this episode, we talked with some personalities fated in the second Global Trends Business Leaders Awards 2023, having shown great resilience to rise above the challenges of the business environment and even managed to expand their network.
It's not always for money, the passion is there.
If you have a goal to achieve, you need to be persistent.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Bakit ganito to? Paano ko magagamit ito kung sira-sira na? Paggawa mo! Lola ka na, TikTok ako ng TikTok.
Bakit mo pinasasabihan hanggang sa harapan ng mga kaibigan ko?
Sinasabihan lang kita kasi kapansin-pansin na yung pagtitiktok mo. Mali na eh.
Ang gusto ko lang naman magka-time ka para sa ating dalawa.
Juliet naman, pag naman may oras ako, ikaw naman ang gusto ko laging kasama eh. Ano pa ba ang gusto mo dun?
Eh kaso nga palagi kang walang oras, di ba?
Former FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried asked a United States judge to dismiss several charges against him. His two-page motion to dismiss aims to drop 10 of the 13 counts he faces. These include fraud, conspiracy, and foreign bribery. The motion stated at least some of the charges failed to properly state an offense. Prosecutors have until the end of the month to respond to Bankman-Fried's motion to dismiss. Tucker Carlson will be reviving his show on Twitter after his abrupt dismissal from Fox News last month. In a tweet captioned, "We're back," the Republican icon shared a video discussing his next moves. The former host said he would be taking his show to Twitter, which he described as the last remaining platform in the world to allow free speech. Carlson's pivot to Twitter comes after the site has become more welcoming to mostly conservative accounts previously banned for spreading hate speech and disinformation under Elon Musk's new direction. Google announces it is opening Bard to 180 countries as it expands its use of artificial intelligence across its platform. Bard is a rival to the Microsoft-backed ChatGPT. Google says that generative AI will also be used to supercharge the tech giant's leading search engine.
We've been applying AI to make our products radically more helpful for a while. With generative AI, we are taking the next step. With a bold and responsible approach, we are reimagining all our core products, including search. With immersive view for routes, now you can. Whether you're
The underdog teams bounce back as the New York Knicks and the Golden State Warriors steal Game 5 from their opponents, while the Japanese baseball phenom Shohei Ohtani passes Babe Ruth's strikeout record. Vin Pasco has the score.
Miami out-rebounded the Knicks in the 2023 NBA playoffs. The New York Knicks and Golden State Warriors take Game 5 victories. With the New York Knicks season on the line, Jalen Brunson delivered. He scored 38 points to seal the Knicks win over the Miami Heat 112-103, cutting Miami's lead in the series 3-2. The Knicks pushed their Eastern Conference semifinal series to a 6th game. New York will try to force a decisive Game 7 in Miami's home court. Meanwhile, the Golden State Warriors stay alive in the playoffs as they defeated LA Lakers 121-106. Stephen Curry led the way with 27 points, while Draymond Green added 20 points and 10 rebounds. The much-needed win of the Warriors has forced the series to Game 6. The game will be on Friday, where the Warriors will also try to force Game 7. It's showtime in the dugouts of Los Angeles. Since Shohei Ohtani made his major league debut in 2018, the comparisons to Babe Ruth have been unrelenting. The Los Angeles Angels two-way player passed his idol in strikeouts in the eyes of Major League Baseball statistics. Ohtani's strikeout of Houston's Jeremy Pena in the second inning was the Japanese star's 502nd strikeout in the mound, with Ruth's strikeout record standing at 501. This makes him the all-time leader in strikeouts by a player with at least 100 career home runs. Showtime has some catching up to do before eclipsing the baseball icon. Ruth hit 714 career homers, while Ohtani has 134. Ohtani was an instant smash in 2018 when he won American League Rookie of the Year. However, he never hit in a game when he started on the mound. In 2021, Ohtani began hitting in the games he pitched. He was named American League MVP that same season. For sports, Vin Pascua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
If you are looking for things to do and where to go this Saturday, come to the Philippine Arena Complex, Ciudad de Victoria, Bocaue, Bulacan, and jam for a day full of OPM music and fun. This Saturday, May 13th, Summer Blast returns to the Philippine Arena Complex. Watch and jam at the highlight of the event, the music festival at the Philippine Sports Stadium, featuring top music acts and OPM bands, including Glock 9, Sponge Cola, Lunar Lights, Silent Sanctuary, Jumanji, Soap Dish, Bandang Lapis, Sunkiss Lola, Yellow, Noah Alejandre, Calista, Eclipse, Goodwill cast with Rise High Band, Rocksteady, and other surprise guests. Attractions in the Philippine Arena Complex are also open, like the Garden, Butterfly Garden, Airsoft Grounds, Museum of Death, House of Mirrors, bazaars, inflatables, food park, trade show, game booths, water fun, amusement rides, and car show. Bring your family, friends, co-workers, and acquaintances this May 13th to the Summer Blast 2023. And Netflix releases an Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary trailer. The trailer shows the ups and downs of the 75-year-old Mr. Olympia in a new 3-part documentary. It recalls the bodybuilder, actor, and politician's life and career from his childhood in Austria to his time as governor of California, and so much more. The 3-part docuseries is directed by filmmaker Leslie Chilcott. Arnold will be streaming on Netflix on June 7. And for your Thursday motivation, here's a quote from American writer Mark Twain. The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you found out why. And here's to wishing everybody finds their purpose in this life. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch latest updates on our social media channels. I am Ricky Mathay. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.